What's up, guys and gals? This is Cherry from Rauta, and today I will tell you a little bit of bad labels. Now, there are basically two kind of record labels existing in the world, and now I'm merely gonna talk you about metal labels. Those two kind of metal labels are obviously the good ones, ching, everybody works well, everything works well, like a charm basically. All these royalties get paid, or something else is just working fine, maybe promotion and all that stuff. Basically, things are left off in a way that people have no reason to complain, no bitch about it, no moan, to make any kind of threats and all that stuff. But on the other side of the coin, we have something which we could call bad labels. Really bad record labels. Now these obviously, much like the good ones, fall into different subcategories. Some are just slow and very bad at work in so many ways. Some are just outright rip-offs, screwing you and the rest of the band with so many ways. Now, why I'm gonna talk about this even a little bit is because I had this video last week about Shining, basically begging for money and also doing these kind of legal threats about some merchandise. T-shirts, I guess, mainly, but also other merchandise, which were not delivered to the people paying, the bill. That is basically the audience, the fans who were really there to support the band, not only financially, but also, going to shows, buying CDs, LPs, or whatever, and just in general being the fans that are both financially and other ways supporting the band, showing their love, if you will. And because of certain events, well, not everything went fine in the Shining camp. But more about that in the Shining video. This is not about Shining anymore. This is about topics that were brought to my attention, related or not, to Shining and the previous label the Mr. Main Guy was running. But also because of my personal experiences with some of the labels, with my own bands, and because some labels just don't do the stuff that well. Now, I'm kind of lucky guy in that sense that none of my bands have been really being ripped off in a bad way. So I guess I'm in so many ways a mid-level experience in this one. I'm not having the worst of that, but then again, I have had my experiences when labels are not working in the ways expected. For example, there was this band Nightside. I used to be vocalist of, and we did a record deal with this label from Brazil called Sound Riot. Basically, everything went just okay. We got our royalties, that is a share of CDs printed. We never got money exactly, but that's kind of a basic thing in underground. This is some other topic which I can tell you later because I actually mentioned this already in streams, like how bands get their own share of royalties and whatever. But everything went just okay with that. Communications were just mostly okay and all that stuff. But obviously along the way, when, this was early 2000s, maybe there was a communication breakdown and all that stuff, but something like we were missing one song. Well, that is kind of like, human fault, mistake. And some of the images or texts used were like, why did you go that? We didn't talk about that. But these kind of talks are not about labeling a record label bad. This is not some kind of a major flaw. How we got basically ripped, if you will, is that the label sold the band's album rights to another label, which had no clue that this original label, Sound Riot, didn't even have the rights to the album. And when I contacted this label, it was a British one called Black Tower Records or Recordings or something like that. Later on, like, hey, what's going on? This is the vocalist guy of the band, and you're releasing this CD as a reprint that we never agreed to. We weren't even asked like if it's okay or if we want to change anything, like for example include the missing track, if we want to change some of the information because it wasn't totally correct the first time. But we never were contacted about it. Not by the previous label, not by the new label. So when I was asking, I was told that, hey, we just purchased this, these rights to your songs. And I'm like, hey, we never sold them. we basically licensed, and as such, as a band, we kept those rights to ourselves in case we wanted to do something else. It's kind of like a gentleman's agreement that we had this going on. But I guess things just got forgotten along the way because you don't have any contract signed with an ink. So then you just kind of things get blurry. Mine doesn't really remember things that well, or then we just were a rip-off. I don't know. Anyway, the point was that this new label just re-released this CD without any official permission from the band, just from the label, and as such, we never got royalties or any copies, not even a hey, anyway, here's your copy by the way. Things just got like that, and we're like, okay. And when I asked my previous band members, like, hey, is there anything you want to do about it? And they like shrugged, like, I don't know, man. Do one. And like, okay, if nobody gives a damn, let's slide it in. And as such, later on, I figured out we were basically one of those enablers. I mean, if you enable shitty things to happen, those things will happen in the future as well. So, wasn't a really smart move from our behalf, but that's another story to be told. Now, about labels that really rip off the artist. Now, there are so many ways to do this kind of ripping off. Typical scenario is what I was just telling about my own band. You just don't rip too hard and the band might be just letting it slide in. They're like, okay, we cannot fight this war, we cannot win this war, so let's just be okay with it and just bite the bullet, so to speak. But sometimes labels do really rip off the band. That is, they have all the files, music files, images, whatever. Then they print and publish the CD, vinyl, whatever format. And the band never get any kind of royalties. Not money, not maybe their own percentage of the royalties as records, nothing, zip, nada. And that's what really pisses people off. Let me put it this way. You have a band. Doesn't matter if it's one-man project or 10-man big orchestra. But you have put so much more time and money and effort, all kind of stuff, your creativity pouring it in, versus the label, which is just basically like, okay, pour it in, come in. And they're just basically, paying the bills for the record to be printed and then shipping it out and grabbing all the money. Now, in a perfect world, none of this would obviously happen, but there's so many stories when labels just rip the bands off. As soon as they have all the files, the music and the rest, they pretty much cut off all the connection. And the band is like wondering like, what's going on? What's happening? Like, why didn't we get any money? What's going on? Why they don't reply to our emails? What the fuck is going on? And if you're leaning or, on these gentleman's agreement, there's basically nothing you can do. There's no legal way. And if the label is, say, on another continent, there's basically no way you can just, do something about it. I mean, if it's your next door guy or guy living in maybe a different city, maybe you can, hey, what's up, guy? I'm going to punch you in the face unless you bring in the royalties. But small bands, basically, first of all, they don't have any real money. So they cannot like, hey, this is Jimmy Bob. Could you go beat the motherfucker a little bit? Because, I'm not getting my royalties. Not gonna happen because you don't have the money in the first place to, print it or publish it yourself. Now, that's another story always, whether or not that would make actually any sense, but you get the idea. So basically, if a band is being ripped off by a label, there's not much you can do. Swallow and just suffer the consequences. You can go as much as you want on online boardings. Like, hey, I will never sign again with these Big Bad Wolf recordings or these dark, abusive hell recordings because, they rip off. And people are like, oh yeah, sounds so bad. And then, click, click, click. Suddenly they are basically ordering the CD from the label, either because they don't care or they don't have a clue. There are lots of people who just, can just record non-licensed, non-official version of any kind of CD, LP, especially with the reprints, reissues. And then they go like bands like, hey, I really love your CD. And the band is like, what's going on? We haven't released a CD for a few years. And then the fan is like, hey, I just bought it last week. This is just a reprint. And the band is like, what reprint? We haven't even heard about it. So basically, band fans can accidentally support the label, which then again ripped off the band. And consequently, they will be supporting the kind of a fraud guy, the pirate, if you will, the rip-off guy, who is then again grabbing all the money for the merch, for the CDs, LPs, tapes, who knows what. And the band, they are gonna be just frustrated because somebody's taking their money. Now, obviously, another thing is, underground society, underground scene is always claiming like it's not about the money, which is the biggest devil in the music industry. A topic which I will later on talk about because it kind of needs to be addressed. Not once again because of Shining Case or not because of this, but various reasons. Now, still, people don't want to be robbed of their money. I mean, after all, when you have put all your creativity, time, effort, and whatever, maybe even had your in-band fights with your creative partners in crime, you don't want to see your money going away into some other pockets. Because after all, it is your money. Doesn't matter whether we're talking about tens of euros or dollars or thousands, it pisses you off. Now, do I really need to remind you of what happened with Varg Vikernes and Uranus of Mayhem, that is Burzum versus Mayhem in 1990s, early 1990s? Yes, it ended up being, stabbing. And Uranus was dead. Vikernes went into prison. Not only it was about money, obviously, but that was playing a part of it, at least according to rumors, like, hey, you didn't release the CD, or you released and I didn't get paid. And then some really, really horrible happened. So my point kind of is, as a fan, you sometimes are supporting the kind of label which is there to just rip off the band. And then again, as a band, you really want to be aware what kind of label you're working with. Now, there would be one kind of a cool solution to all of this, and it would be transparency. That is, labels being transparent about what they do. Another way would be to kind of sign a contract. It kind of sounds stupid when we're talking about underground and mutual trust and gentleman's agreement, but let's be honest about it. There's so many douchebags who are no gentlemen at all. And as such, with working with such labels, well, it's never that simple or trustworthy business. Now, if only there was a service which would let you to kind of notify which labels are bad. For the sake of conversation, I actually Googled one label, death and black metal label, which in my opinion, or according to the rumors anyway, has this kind of a shady reputation. Some people are saying it has been ripping so many people and bands off. I won't mention the label. First of all, I don't have any facts. I only have those rumors. Secondly, I'm not gonna, give a snowball effect to these kind of things, these kind of reputation things, because first of all, like I said, it's not based by facts. And secondly, there's so many angles to every story. Now, a label might be a ripoff to some, but it might be a trustworthy label to some others. The thing is, all these comments about bad labels and good labels, they're usually buried on some internet forums, Facebook pages, or other social media services, where it's kind of virtually impossible to dig out all that information. For example, for this particular label, which is kind of a controversial, I tried Googling up using the word reputation there, like if there is any kind of ill words said about this particular label, like is there something to kind of back up these rumors? After first few dozens of search results, nothing basically popped up. Either they're so old rumors or they're not simply enough stuff to be coming up. And that kind of brings back to the point. Now, there is no easy way to find whether or not a certain label is a good label or a bad label, which doesn't really help the bands. Now, the bands are left alone, especially when the bands don't communicate well enough with each other. And bands who are way out of reach, from these bigger labels, which are trustworthy, kind of commercial labels with all the lawyers and signed treaties and agreements. When you are just bound to operate in underground, you basically just have to hope and trust that these labels work fine and you get your royalties, you get your share, or maybe not. I don't know. It's kind of a hard world where so many bands, and obviously labels do live with their reputation. But if a label is able to pull some stunts, eventually all these ill reputation rumors and all that stuff will go away. So once again, we live in a kind of a world with weird balance between bands and labels. I don't know if this video made any sense to you or if it just made you more confused, like how things are or why they are as such. Well, one can even hope that one day, maybe side as Metal Archives or the like, will have the certain kind of a voting system for labels as there is for bands with the similar artists tab. Like you could vote for, okay, this is a good label, it does its job work, whether it's about promotion, getting the royalties or things in a timely fashion, or whether a label is really, really bad. I don't know if underground world even requires or demands, let alone deserves that. But I'm just thinking, what are your thoughts? Do you think that good labels should be thumbed up and bad labels should be thumbed down, or does it even matter? Is it all meaningless because of the cosmic void and all that stuff? I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you have a band? Have you been ripped off? And if so, in which ways? Do you want to mention the label? Do you want to share a good story? If so, leave me a comment and I will consider making a video about good labels and bad labels. Part 2. Thank you for watching the video. See you soon and bye bye.